Hello, Martin.
Hi, Peter.
How are you doing?
Oh, quite okay. How about you?
Yeah, very good. I've been practicing and comparing against Marty's data and your data, and I did a pretty good lap time yesterday. I would like us to look at the data together and have some questions about it, and then I actually want to focus more on the more recent sessions where I couldn't repeat the lap time. Let me actually share my screen with you. Um, do you see it?
Yeah, I just need to figure out a way how to make it full screen. Is that possible? Ah, there we go.
Okay. So that's it. Fastest lap. I just go in order. I mean, there's very little difference in just the shape of the brake, and because of that, I guess. I mean, in terms of speed through the corner is very similar. So I think that's very marginal anyway. I mean, it's three tenths.
Three
So
one hundreds.
yeah, 3/100s. Yeah.
So it's really negligible, actually, the
Yeah.
difference.
So I think before I did this lap, I actually studied your traces, and I saw that I was trailing. I think it was more like a linear kind of trace. So, and I tried to make it like a more progressively trail off, so that essentially the integral should be smaller, apply less brake force through the trailing phase. So I think, yeah, I almost replicated this. But the question I have for you is, how do you know um, how to how to trail? Like whether it should be like more linear, or whether it should be more like sort of invert geometric progression kind of shape. I mean, I know that for you a lot of it is feel, but then if you try to reason about it, because without your trace I wouldn't know what to do. You know what I mean? If I have your
Hmm.
trace, I can see, okay, I'll try to replicate this, and then I try to plan coming into the turn, okay, a little bit heavy braking while I'm downshifting, and then I need to trail off uh, progressively afterwards. But how do you figure it out?
It basically just comes from testing a couple different approaches, and what I'm trying to sort of pay attention to is just how the balance changes and whether or not I have any problem with the car during the trade braking. In case I'm sort of doing a relatively linear trade braking, you would probably have a little bit more brake towards the very end of the trading phase, and that would probably just lead to balance issues. Either you have a little bit too much longitudinal slip in the front tires, and the car will just sort of plow a little bit straight and will be very reluctant to turning in, or you get some excessive slip in the rear, and the car will just oversteer more than it should. It's just basically testing it a couple times in a couple different sort of variations, and then evaluating, is a balance good or is a balance not so good.
Okay.
And this sort of shape of the brake trace seemed to be the one that gave me these problems with turning.
Got it. Okay, so essentially, given that the kind of turn that is, you need to do heavy braking, and then you probably need to trail some. Um, is that sort of your starting point, and then from that point on, it's experimentation just to see how long is the heavy braking phase versus the trailing phase?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it all comes down to experimenting for
Yeah.
most cars and most tracks. I mean,
Okay.
you obviously for most tracks at some point have a feeling what kind of the starting point should be, but from there on onwards, you still have to sort of readjust a little bit. It also depends on weather conditions. That can also change it a little bit. So uh, it's not set in stone, really.
Yeah. So here's something that I remember doing, and that's not necessarily a good practice, but see how I overlap the brake and throttle. And I think I did it because I tried to do a smoother transition between braking and acceleration. And I think when I overlap a little bit, it just feels like the motion, I guess the balance of the car remains more constant. Um, and I don't know if I just I'm like mistaken, or I think this particular lap we might see this a few more times. I think when I consciously try to do this, I seem to be going faster. I don't know why. So I guess should I avoid this kind of thing?
Not really. I mean, it can help, especially in the later phases of braking when you might run more into the issue that the rears are a little bit prone to lock up. That way you can just sort of move the brake bias a little bit forward, and if it helps you balance the car out and you're going quicker with it, I don't see a reason why you shouldn't do it. I mean, it adds fuel consumption, but uh, if you do it in that kind of scale, it probably doesn't matter whatsoever.
Okay.
You might use a tenth of a liter more per race, but
Okay.
that is probably irrelevant.
But the textbook is when I finish trailing, that's when I should gradually get on the throttle. So I don't know if I do this. So I know the Skippy tolerates going full throttle very quickly, but I try to just at least ease on the throttle some. That seems to help me. Um, should I not try to do that? Like I
I
guess here, even if we ignore this initial bump here on the on throttle, if we look at it from here.
it sort of depends. I mean, in some corners, this might actually be a good thing because just stomping the throttle might induce a fairly big wobble in the drivetrain, and you might sort of um, get the inside rear wheel to spin
Mm-hmm.
and to just lose a little bit of traction and therefore limiting acceleration a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Although typically, especially in corners where you're not in first gear, it probably shouldn't induce any wheel spin and
Mm-hmm.
you could just stomp it. But
Mm-hmm.
modulating it a little bit doesn't really cost all that much time. It's
Mm-hmm.
not really something that's bad.
Okay. Okay. Let me quickly look at some of the other corners. So yeah, that's a whole tent. I guess it's mostly losing time, losing speed, and then losing time down the straight. So it's a very different um, shape. So I guess you have a second tap right before the apex. Was it sort of a correction, or is that how you would drive around every
That's
lap?
a correction, definitely. Usually you should have one brake motion and then that's it. And
Okay.
that's pretty much a secondary attempt at braking. I was completely
Mhm.
off the brake already and then
Mhm.
gave it another step to I don't even exactly remember what I did there. Probably
Mhm.
just put in some additional load on the front tire so that it turns a little bit better.
Mhm.
But typically, ideally it would be sort of one fluid motion, not
Mhm.
two separated
Yeah.
brake attempts.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I definitely can work on replicating your brake trace a little bit, but I think here the challenge I have is I brake, downshift once, twice, and only then begin to trail. And I think in your case, you actually are already releasing some brake pressure when you do the second downshift. Yeah. So fifth, fourth here right before the peak, and then right after the peak, you downshift again, and I downshift oh, like maybe a third of a second later. So
I don't exactly remember how that lap went, but on that track I sort of was almost a little bit too early on downshifts, I believe. I'm not exactly sure how much speed the gears tolerate. I think third gear at maximum is tolerating, I believe, 150-ish kilometers per hour, and I'm in third at 169. So maybe that's actually a good bit of over revving. But I'm not sure. Maybe I'm confusing second gear and third gear speed limits. I don't
Yeah.
exactly know anymore.
But I guess I try to, if you're not turning yet, neither am I. I guess I can. The thing is, I find it difficult to. Maybe it's just a matter of practice, but I find it difficult to trail and downshift, because the moment I start trailing, I start turning, and then that unsettles the car if I downshift, and I'm not revving either, so that's not helping.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the downshifting while turning, that can be helped with a little bit of blipping. Then you can, if you're hitting the blip just right, it won't unsettle the car at all. But it's kind of difficult to hit it perfectly. You can get it.
Yeah.
You can get somewhat close with a just some generic step on the throttle, and the gear will go in and will be somewhat smooth. But if you're really cornering on the limit, then I think the car is kind of oversteering that corner. At least for me, it was. It happened a couple of times that I went in to that corner with a good bit of drifting, and yeah, I guess for that corner you need to be extremely smooth in order to get a perfect time there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which
that might
actually
limit it a little.
leads me to another question. I notice I think I lose the most time because I guess that's just a little bit of oversteer, but yeah, the car slides or skids a little bit, and I guess I scrape off some speed and then lose 20, 30, 40 hundredths. Yeah, 2 to 4 tenths of a second by the end of the straight. So how can I avoid this? I guess a little. It's not massive oversteer, but just little. It's little enough to lose quite a bit of speed.
When does it occur? I guess it occurs under braking still.
I think actually the next turn is when it happens very frequently. Um, yeah, and maybe we should look at it again later, looking one of the more recent sessions. But I think that I just find this. I mean, sometimes I feel like I really can nail this turn, but other times it just I lose the back end just a slight bit, and yeah, the 2 tenths just are lost right there.
Well, it sort of depends on when it's occurring or what the origin of the overstay is. If it is under braking and downshifting, then I would sort of advise you to either try to do a little bit of a blip there under downshifting, or just keep a little bit of throttle while braking, just to get the balance a little bit more in check and avoid having longitudinal rear slip under braking on the rear tires. If that happens, you just are in for a good bit of decrease in grip laterally in the rear, and then the car, once you start turning in, has a tendency to oversteer quite badly at times.
So for the previous turn, I need to pay attention about balance as a result, balance changes as a result of the downshift. I think in this case, in this turn, I do the downshift fairly early. But then I don't know, maybe I'm turning the steering wheel too much, or I'm not slowing down enough. What's the most likely cause for a small amount of oversteer?
It's more likely that you're entering too quickly, although the data doesn't suggest that you do this. You're a little bit quicker at around 1730 meters, so maybe that's...
Actually, let me load a more recent session. Let's do this. I guess not even the fastest lap. I'll just pick a random lap.
In that case, you're indeed entering a little bit quickly, it seems. Although that's very far from the corner, actually. In the middle of the corner, I'm actually going faster. So it can't be too much speed, really.
Let me see a few more. Okay, but so it's either speed, higher speed, or could it be turning the wheel too much?
Unlikely, really. That car usually tends to to understeer if you turn the wheel too much.
Okay.
So I would guess if it's not too much speed, it's probably in some way related to how you brake into the corner. I'm not sure whether I actually avoided this by having that sort of dip in the brake trace, where I basically go down to around 15%, then back to 30-ish.
Yeah. Okay, but so it looks like it's not the speed, it's maybe just... So I guess I don't transition smooth enough. So when I start turning, I want to have like I want to maintain like a good balance. And then I guess I don't. Then becomes oversteer. Can we tell if it's actually here it's oversteering? Or is it? There
There
is
seems
some
to be a bit of
oversteer, yeah.
oversteer.
I think, yeah, it's very minor. 5-6 degrees. Well, but yeah, you have some, but I have more. And here it's the opposite. But maybe that's already, I guess, past the apex. I guess I do have more at the entry phase.
Yeah, you have a fairly big peak there as well. A couple meters later, after the position you're right now,
Like here?
there seems to be right around here. There seems to
Yeah.
be a fairly big spike.
Yeah, so maybe let's see what's going on. I'm not on the throttle yet. Brake. Fast braking.
So brake is released for both of us,
Yeah.
and you're sort of in the process of going full throttle, whereas I'm already on the throttle. Although that also shouldn't make too much of a difference there.
I'm increasing the steering lock. So it goes very smoothly and then I'm increasing more rapidly. Could that be contributing?
It could be, but it seems untypical, really. Usually, when you turn the wheel real quickly in that car while on the throttle, it usually tends to understeer.
Something about the line?
You're turning in a little bit late there. If you look at the line, there seems to be a relatively big difference, and you're
Yeah. Actually, more about the meter difference, I guess, here.
1.8. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe
Also an
just the
exit.
line, because I need to. It's a tighter. Well, it's a smaller radius here in the beginning. So maybe even though the speed is smaller than yours, maybe it's still too fast for this line.
Could be, yeah. I mean, you're entering from further in the inside. You're more towards the outside mid corner, and then finish up further in the inside. So that's a good radius decrease with your line. So
Yeah, okay.
that could just be the reason that the speed is just too high for that kind of line. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just pay more attention to the line there. That could be it.
I need to make sure that you cut the apex quite heavily. You can cut that corner quite dramatically. The curb would just
Oh,
pretty much
okay.
tolerate it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm doing it. Okay. And then I think the other thing in general is you're way early on the throttle, and for some reason I can't. I it just doesn't feel I'm ready, but maybe it's because of the line. Even if we go back to my fastest lap, let's see what's going on there. Yeah, I go full throttle way later, like 25 meters. 25 meters. And the line here actually
It
looks
looks actually
better.
better now. Although you're still entering from too far on the inside.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you hit the apex much better.
Yeah. So, do you think this is just confidence? Like, I can probably go full throttle, but I don't have confidence to go full throttle.
Could be. I mean, you're not really using the space on exit, so I guess you could try it to just
Yeah.
stomp the throttle a little bit earlier and track out a little bit further.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so but definitely I need to essentially stay as close to the curb from the previous turn and stay to the outside of the track and widen that radius.
Would be good, yeah. It just makes it easier, and
Yeah.
you'll be able to carry a little bit more speed through the corner.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of sort of the ideal shape of the brake trace, should it be should I try to elongate it a little bit more, like your first peak, but then just have a more gradual or more progressive sort of trailing, essentially eliminate the second peak?
I guess that would probably be better. I think the thing I'm doing there is just reacting to balance issues that I have with the car. Ideally, if you are perfecting that corner, it should be again just one fluid motion if it's possible.
Okay. Okay, let's see the last one. Oh, well, it's not the last one. Line is almost, well, I guess you're tracking out quite a bit more. But yeah, the brake trace is similar. I have more steering lock.
Probably understeering into that corner. That corner usually tends to exhibit quite a lot of understeer in the car. At least for me, the car was
Yeah.
extremely understeering. I was also having pretty big difficulties at first getting the throttle down without just tracking out too far and hitting the grass. It's kind of the limit there for me with the understeer.
So, I guess you do like a couple of corrections. So what's going on here? I mean, you're turning the car better with less steering input. Is it because is it thanks to those like I guess you're briefly increasing brake pressure. Is that what does the trick?
Pretty much, yeah. I think what I'm doing there for that particular corner is I'm deliberately trying to induce oversteer in order to get rid of the pretty terminal understeer that I usually would get in that corner. I just can't get the car to turn properly, so I'm deliberately trying to make the car drift a little on entry, so I can get the car pointed towards in the correct direction as early as I possibly can.
So how do you do this? I mean, do you brake and then reduce the steering lock anticipating the oversteer?
I
Or
think that's already a correction to the slight oversteer that I had. I was turning in, and then once the oversteer was there, I sort of opened up the steering a little bit.
okay. But okay, so essentially you wanted to understeer some, so you will apply a little bit more brake pressure, then you're responding to this. Okay. But again, is that kind of in the moment thing, or like would you try to drive this way?
That's pretty much just a reaction to what's happening. Ideally, you wouldn't even do that and flick the car in like that. But for me, in that particular lap, that just seemed to be the thing I needed to do. And I noticed that I'm sort of an initial corner entry. I'm either too late into the corner or I'm gonna understeer out of it. That was basically just yeah, a little bit of a countermeasure to not end up off the track due to
Yeah.
understeer. Just
So
try to flick it in a little.
and that's a tricky corner because it's also blind. You have to brake without really seeing the apex.
Yeah, that's
I
true. It is a blind corner.
Yeah, I sometimes find myself almost cutting it, and then I have to back out a little bit, and then I have to go a wider line. Um, so how do you flick the car? Like what do you just more? I guess you don't really turn too much. Is it? Do you flick it using the brakes? Like how?
Pretty much, it's a combination of braking and then turning the wheel relatively quickly. You just need to put quite a lot of load on the front tires, and then steer in a relatively rapid movement in order to induce a little bit of a slide.
I think on the last track, what I found myself doing is if I turn a little bit and then get on the brakes, that just, I mean, then the back end would just hop a little bit. But you're not doing that. I guess you're braking and then gradually increasing the steering lock, or more rapidly increasing here. I guess which is that a more sort of controlled way to do it if you're already on the brakes? Because what I described earlier, I sometimes would just, I guess, overdo it, and then I will be oversteering, and it would take a while for the back end to sort of go back in line.
I mean, that way, it's pretty much induced oversteer. This is definitely something that is controlled and actually wanted. It's not something that is happening by
Yeah.
chance. It is done consciously.
Yeah.
That is pretty much a plan for that
Yeah.
corner, at least in that particular lap.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, but essentially what you're doing is you're braking, and then you just turn the steering wheel a little bit more abruptly, like I guess this period here.
Mm-hmm.
So you're increasing the steering lock from what, that's 6 degrees to 14 degrees in, or 20 degrees in, what's it, like a fraction of a second. So that's the one that does the trick, and from then on you're just balancing the car so that you can actually make it through the turn.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I think the sort of upward movement at around 2050 meters, that's basically just a correction. That's actually fighting the oversteer. Even though I'm not countersteering, I'm just sort of reducing steering lock a little bit
Yeah.
so that it doesn't oversteer even more than it actually is doing already.
Okay. So I had one-on-ones with Marty last week, and something an advice he gave me was to always have a plan for each turn, so that I know how I brake when I turn, essentially have a plan for the sequence of things I'm doing, and then to evaluate how I'm doing at the end of the turn. So I've actually find this surprisingly difficult to do because it requires a lot of concentration. Um, and I think whenever I do it successfully, I end up doing fast laps. Like this lap in particular, I remember after looking at your traces, I remembered I had a plan to, for every turn, like when to trail brake and how much to trail brake, because those were the biggest differences. And then, I mean, I knew what I wanted to do. I sort of kept repeating before the turn what my plan was, and then I was able to do it. But that's surprisingly difficult to do consistently. I mean, it requires discipline and focus and concentration. And yeah, so it's difficult. I wonder if you do the same or you have a different trick.
Um, I'm sometimes doing that if I notice that for whatever reason I'm having difficulties to match my laps that I have done earlier in a week or maybe the week before.
Uh huh.
Then I'm trying that.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I'm usually not really doing that at all.
Mm-hmm. I guess if I don't do this, I guess I fall back to my sort of more natural driving style. And I guess if your natural driving style is already like very quick, then you don't need to do this. But as a while I'm learning and trying to learn new techniques, I guess that's a very good tool. Um, One problem I have with this is I know, let's say I know what my plan is, but I don't really have the awareness of what I'm actually doing. Like I might think I'm doing one thing, but I'm not sure. I actually have to go back to the telemetry and see if I'm actually doing this. So I actually this particular lap, I wasn't sure. I tried to do what my plan was, but I wasn't sure I was doing it. Do you have this awareness of like at the end of the turn? Do you remember? Like, do you know exactly what you did in terms of like all the inputs, all the driving inputs?
Mostly yes, although if I look back at the lap, it usually only I only remember it for a couple key turns
Mm-hmm.
uh, that are very important, but I don't know it exactly or know the exact inputs for every single corner. That's something
Mm-hmm.
I can't just get into my head. I'm only
But
sort of
uh-huh.
trying to pay attention to a couple very specific corners that are basically the key corners on a circuit where you
Mm-hmm.
uh, lose or gain the most time, depending on
Okay.
whether you mess up or do it properly.
Okay. So essentially, like you know that you want to pay attention to this, and coming into the turn, that's part of your plan essentially to know what you're doing. Or just by having a plan of exactly what you want to do, you sort of remember it because you're just more conscious or try to be more aware of those particular turns.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Because I guess I can tell I can tell when I have oversteer or understeer. I would know if the car is well balanced, but then I won't necessarily know what caused the imbalance. So how any tips on how to troubleshoot this? Like I mean, we did this now by looking at the telemetry, but it's sort of slower. I mean, to go back, leave the session, go back, look at the telemetry. How do you troubleshoot these kind of things sort of on the spot if you notice that, say, you get oversteer?
That's a tough question to answer, really. You sort of just need to be very aware of sort of if you have a spot where that problem occurs relatively often. You just need to pay lots of attention to what you're doing and what the car is doing, and then just question yourself, what have I done that might sort of lead to this behavior? And then you just have to basically take a look. Am I smooth with the inputs? Am I downshifting at an inappropriate place? or am I hitting a curb that I'm not supposed to hit? Or is there anything that unsettles the car on the track? I don't know. Is there a bump that needs to be taken in a very specific angle so that the car is stable with, or is there anything? And if there is nothing that you can find immediately, then it might also be worth a shot. Obviously, not for the Skippy, since the Skippy is pretty much kind of a fixed setup series because you can't really do all that much on the setup. But in other cars, then maybe you have to ask a question: is the car maybe just not doing what it's supposed to do in that corner? Is I don't know. Is aerodynamic balance sort of messed up due to the front of the car diving in too much, or is the right hit in the rear too high, or are the ARBs doing things they're not supposed to do? It's that kind of stuff that you sort of need to pay attention then. But other than that, I don't really have any idea how to tackle that.
Right. So I guess focus and concentration is super important, and if I have the plan and I can keep reminding myself of my plan, that definitely helps. But I find that rather difficult. So I mean, I guess maybe it's just a matter of practice, and I guess it probably also depends on mental state in terms of like how tired I am. But do you have any tips on how to practice concentration? Just being able to maintain like this kind of concentration for more than just like a couple of laps.
Oh, well, I don't really have any tips how to practice it. I mean, as you said, a couple things need to be in line for that. You should be fairly well hydrated. You should be definitely not be tired. You shouldn't have any, medicine or alcohol in the system. And other than that, I don't think that there's really much that you can practice it with. At least nothing comes to mind for me right now. I guess most of it is down to practice. At least for me, when I was sort of getting started with longer races and full distance Grand Prix distances, at the beginning it was kind of difficult, but after a couple of races, it was no issue anymore. I think that was pretty much just down to practice. I haven't really done anything special back then. So.
Okay, and so but you said that you don't necessarily need to very carefully like go over your plan all the time, because I guess you only need that while you sort of learn the track. But then that just frees up your focus to other things. I guess once you're in a race, you don't really need to be, I guess you need your attention focus to be on what's happening around and not like how exactly to trail break through like a specific turn.
Well, both really. Although the driving at some point shouldn't really take away your focus anymore. Once you're sort of experienced and so know the car really well, you're usually just driving subconsciously. Yeah, that at least that's what's the case for me. I'm not really paying attention to what the car is doing at all, especially not in qualifying. In qualifying, if you start thinking about what you're doing, you will sort of focus on things too much, and the lap won't be good. At least that's the case for me. If I focus on things, I'm slow. I just need to focus on certain things when I'm practicing things or trying out different setup approaches to really be very aware of what the car is doing in different phases and under braking or in the corner. But when actually going for hot laps or for race, I'm usually not thinking about driving at all.
Okay. Let's look at some of the more recent sessions. So you see how like this was a really good session, and then 6, 7, and the last one was pretty bad. So, I mean, how do I swing back to this lap time? I mean, just looking at the progression. Maybe I'm trying too hard, maybe I'm trying to be too focused and overthink it. I mean, just what you said right now is that maybe I try to be too analytical.
could very well be. I mean, it's really tough to answer that. I mean, I'm basically I can't look inside your head and tell you why there is
Right.
why there is a difference.
Uh-huh.
You can sort of analyze it and see, okay, that input has changed and is not as good anymore. But
Yeah. What caused it? Yeah, that's
yeah, I don't know why you do this.
yeah.
That's something that is sort of not really accessible to me,
Right.
and it could be anything really. That's really tough to answer. How to get back to that? Usually, when I'm sort of stuck in a situation where I just can't hit the lap anymore that I did the other day, I'm usually just yeah, calling it a day and attempt the next day or at least a couple hours later and just yeah, try to focus on something else for a while and then try again. Usually that works, but uh, it might be something that's only working for me or
Yeah.
only working for a
Yeah,
group of
no,
persons and not for everyone.
yeah,
But
I found that to help me as well. I just, yeah, just give myself some time to sleep on it, and then, yeah, next day, next morning is better.
usually sleep helps quite a lot. If
Yeah.
things don't work, have a nap and then return. That, at least for me, work quite well.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a brief look. So this actually looks very similar to your trace. I guess the full throttle. I guess here it's much nicer, cleaner, sort of more textbook kind of transition. But still, I guess I just lose speed, maybe because of this part here where I'm
Yeah,
applying
you're
more
breaking a
brake
bit
pressure.
more.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, this kind of little differences actually can have quite significant impact on the lap time. I mean, that's the kind of thing. It's so small. I guess I'm not even aware I'm doing it. So I just need to more trail off faster. I guess I need to remind myself that I need to be trailing off faster. I mean, how can I tell in the moment that without having to look at the telemetry? Like, what would feel different?
Well, if you have a good feeling for the car, you would maybe have you would probably observe that if you're sort of braking a little bit too much, you're if you turn in at the same point usually or have a fixed marker for turn in, that you end up being too far on the inside and you're running over the inside curb too much. Or although that would be sort of a late diagnostic and you would basically already have messed up the corner and you would only notice, okay, that wasn't good, but I can't correct it anymore.
Yeah, but I
If
can
you're to
correct
slow
it
into the
next
corner
stop.
and
Yeah.
applying the throttle as usual, you would just at the end of the corner see, well, I haven't tracked out all that far. I could have used more space, and using more space basically just comes from taking more speed through the corner. That's the most natural way of tracking out further.
So I guess what might be happening is because I guess my steering trace looks fine. I might actually not be using the full traction of the available traction, right? How can I tell? Let's see. Can we tell from this, from the traction circle? Somehow, I guess it's specifically in this phase, or maybe the phase after. When do I have the? When do we have the speed delta? So already here we have the difference. I don't know. And
It's not very conclusive. That data points
yeah,
where I'm pulling more G's and then
yeah,
the data point after you're pulling more G's. So
yeah,
it's kind of inconclusive to me
yeah.
so far.
I guess I should feel that I should feel that the tires are not at the limit,
Though
right?
that's hard to feel, especially in that car. It doesn't really give you any uh, characteristic um, feedback in
Mm-hmm.
that way. That's a really tough thing to sort of feel out of the car.
But there is the thing with the steering wheel where, like the with the force feedback, like becomes like very dampened, very sort of soft.
Yeah, although at least to me, it feels like in this car it's not as pronounced as it is on some of the other cars.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's running on street tires, so steering in general is a little bit of it feels
Mm-hmm.
a little more dampened due to
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
tread blocks moving around. I would guess is
Mm-hmm.
a physical reason behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it doesn't really offer all the
Mm-hmm.
feedback that some of the other cars offer with higher end tires.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so I should try to like somehow pay more attention and see if I can tell that I overslowed the car, but it's only like what 2 kilometers difference.
It is definitely a small difference. It's nothing major, but it's just the problem with those cars, with those momentum cars in those
Mm-hmm.
corners. If you have a small speed
Yeah.
differential in the middle of the corner, you can't really make it up.
Yeah.
It will get close to zero, but it
Yeah.
won't hit zero or cross zero, and you'll
Yeah.
basically lose time all the way down the
Yeah.
straightaway,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and there's no way to correct it anymore.
Yeah.
So even though small differences can actually lead to
Mm-hmm.
a fairly hefty lap time difference or sector time difference. And
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose it's probably the same here when it loads. Uh, it's too much brake pressure. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the pattern. Exactly what you described. Overslowing in the mid turn, and then you can't really make it up. That's quite significant. 7 kilometers per hour, almost. Okay, so I guess overall I just need to brake a little bit less. Yeah, same thing. Okay, so when the moment I start braking too little, what's gonna happen is I might have too much speed, and then the car will get oversteering. So I would know I'm not braking enough, and I have to next lap I have to correct. I guess I won't be able to correct in the moment, but I guess for the next lap I should be able uh, to make corrections.
pretty much, yeah. It's not really guaranteed that it will oversteer if you are too late on it or if you haven't braked enough. Uh, Depending on the corner, you might also exhibit some relatively severe understeer. Both could happen, but
Mm-hmm.
you'll definitely feel it. If you're too quick in it, you're just not going to be able to make the corner. Either you won't be able to hit the apex,
Mm-hmm.
and subsequently you won't be able to hit the exit of the corner as well. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you're lucky, you might hit the apex, but nonetheless, you then will
Mm-hmm.
have issues getting out of the corner.
Mm-hmm. And then once I do it, how I need to just like, I guess that's muscle memory at that point, just being able to do it lap over lap. I guess if I know, okay, this is good, I need to just repeat it enough times, and then I'll be able to do it without thinking about it.
Very likely, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so as always, like more track time is needed.
Yeah, that's almost always the case,
Yeah.
especially for a pretty much newcomer like you. You're not driving for that long at this point.
Yeah.
Uh, usually the only thing that really helps over time is
Mm-hmm.
practice, practice,
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
At some point, you will hit some sort of saturation point, but since you're not even doing it for a year now, at least consecutively,
Mm-hmm.
you're for sure not at the point of saturation yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
just one, as long as you have time,
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
That will
Yeah. Okay.
almost guaranteed help you.
Okay. Cool. All right. I think that's all the questions I had. Thanks a lot, Martin.
Yeah, no problem.
And if you have time later in the week, we can do another follow up just to check in on progress and see how things are going.
Yeah, sure. Friday maybe?
Yeah.
Would Friday fit you?
Yeah. Friday is great. All
Okay,
right.
yeah, then
Thanks
let's
a
shoot for
lot.
Friday.
Talk to you Friday.
Yep. Talk to you then. Have a
Bye.
nice evening. Bye.